everybody. My name is Brent. Welcome to the show. You're listening to the LJS podcast, episode number 10. That's right, we made it to episode number 10. Thanks, everybody, for listening so far. And in today's episode, I got the distinct privilege of talking with internationally renowned guitarist Bruce Forman. In my opinion, one of the best jazz guitarists alive right now. So this was incredible. We had an excellent conversation. I got him on the phone all the way from Los Angeles, California, right before he was heading off to a gig. So we're very excited for today's show. I'm excited for you to listen to this amazing conversation that we had together. But before we get started, I just want to say that all of the music on today's show is by our guest, Bruce Forman. It's off of his latest album, The Book of Forman. And if you like this music today, if you want to maybe buy his album, you can go to cdbaby.com, look up The Book of Forman or look up Bruce Forman. I'm sure you'll find it there, and you can purchase that album. And today, since this is our 10th episode, in a way, I kind of consider it a bit of a mile marker. You know, when we first started this podcast, we weren't really sure if how it was going to be received. We weren't really sure if we should, continue doing it. But what we got was just an overwhelming response from all of our listeners on and readers on Learn Jazz Standards. And you all seem to really like the show. So we want to thank everybody for listening to the show so far and for following us, for tuning in. We sincerely appreciate it. And we especially want to thank all of you who have supported this podcast by donating. We really appreciate it. We also were unsure if we're going to be able to fund the production of this show. And we thank everybody so much so far for donating one time or giving monthly to support this podcast. We could not do this without you. So we want to thank everybody so much who has supported us thus far by giving. And if you get some value out of today's show, if you get something out of it, consider adding value back. We're dedicated to keeping this podcast 100% ad-free. So if you got some value out of it today, there's a support button below the player. If you're listening on the website, you can give a one-time or monthly donation there. Or if you're not listening on the website, you can go to learnjazzstandards.com/support and you can give there. We really appreciate all of your support. All right, now before I get Bruce on the line, I just want to talk a little bit about Bruce for those of you who may not be familiar. Like I said, I think Bruce is, in my opinion, he's one of the best jazz guitarists living today. He's had about 17 recordings out as a leader. He's played on countless albums as a sideman. He's even had a featured role on one of Ray Brown's last albums. He's done soundtrack performances for Clint Eastwood's Oscar-winning $1 Million Baby. I'm sure a lot of you have seen that film. He's done other stuff like that. He's just a renowned educator. He is a professor at, not a professor, but he's an adjunct faculty at USC, Thornton School of Music. And he's played at jazz festivals all around the world. I mean, he's really a career jazz professional and world class by all means. And I first met Bruce actually when I was much younger. I think I was probably around 16 or 17, definitely before I had dedicated myself to being a jazz musician. And Bruce really was a guy that he led me in the right direction. It was at this jazz camp. It was the first year of the jazz camp. It was called the Great Basin Jazz Camp. And I believe the first year is taking place in Nevada. And so I went down to this camp, and it just so happened to be that because it was in its first year, there were actually no other guitar players at the camp. So I got to spend an entire week with Bruce, just one-on-one, playing and talking and hanging out. And I think at the time I didn't even realize how valuable that was. But it really impacted me a lot. He really led me in the right direction. A lot of teachers have, but he really, especially in a guitar sense, led me down the right direction. And in jazz, it doesn't matter if you're listening and you don't play guitar, you're going to get a lot out of today's conversation. So Bruce was just a really impactful figure in my life as a jazz musician. So I'm just really excited to have him on today. So let's without further ado, let's get Bruce on the line all the way from Los Angeles. right, today I got on internationally renowned jazz guitarist from Los Angeles, Bruce Forman. Bruce, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, it's a pleasure, Brent. Great to talk to you.
Absolutely. Well, I just wanted to start out by just talking a little bit about your musical beginnings and just find out, how you got started on this whole thing. So did you come from a musical family?
Not really. No, my mother did make me play piano when I was a kid, classical piano. And so I did that from about the age of 6 and just sort of, did that for a while and got hip to a guitar at about 12 or 13 and just sort of played around with it. It was just easy to carry around and learn some stuff, whatever everybody was playing at the time. That would have been about 1968.
Uh-huh.
So, and then I kind of gravitated more towards that instrument than the piano. It was a lot. I was playing with other people. I think I liked that a lot, and it was nice to be able to carry it around.
Right.
And and then I heard Charlie Parker, and that was the end of everything.
Wow. Yeah, Charlie Parker. So that's what kind of got you hooked on the jazz thing?
Yeah, totally.
Okay. So how did you get to this point where, at what point was it in your life? I mean, when you discovered Charlie Parker, but how did you get to where you are now? What made you go towards this path of becoming a professional jazz musician?
Wow. Well, I just loved the music, and there was a couple of guys in my school that were good players, and then I got connected with the rich jazz community of San Francisco and all the players there, and they were very welcoming, and I just loved the music, I loved the people, and I loved the challenge, and so I just sort of did it. It was all I wanted to do, really, and I just kept doing it. Next thing you know, I'm gigging, in high school, and I love it so much. I'm just in a constant state of studying it all the time and
Right.
checking out what everybody's doing. And it just sort of happened to me. It didn't really, I didn't kind of go to career day at high school and kind of decide, wow, I want to sleep late, so maybe I ought to be a jazz musician,
Right. Now, there wasn't, was there the kind of thing they have now where you go to college for jazz, or was it completely different back then?
Well, it was just starting back then.
Okay.
There was a couple of schools that did have jazz programs. North Texas and Berkeley were going strong. Indiana was just starting up. It was in its fledgling, the jazz education world. And I was lucky to be in San Francisco. It was such a rich time. We had this great club called Keystone Corner, which had the world's greatest jazz bands, would play 6 nights a week there, along with numerous other clubs where other bands would come through, and a lot of great local players, and Bobby Hutcherson and Joe Henderson and
Yeah.
Woody Shaw and George Cables all lived in San Francisco at that time. So I was immersed in this amazing community, and so I went and checked out North Texas, and I just realized being out in Denton with a bunch of kids my age, or hanging in San Francisco with Woody Shaw and Joe Henderson and Bobby Hutcherson, it just seemed pretty obvious to me what the best thing for me to be doing was at that time. And then I moved to New York, and so it was just...
Moved to New York? I didn't know you moved to New York.
Yeah, I lived in New York in the late 70s. So,
okay. How long did you live in New York?
2 years.
2 years.
And I was in a lot of bands that were touring, and they were based on the West Coast. So I just sort of ended up out here again, where it's my home, and I kind of never, I go through New York, but I never moved back there, But so it was a whole different world then. There were lots of gigs and lots of bands playing, and lots of inspiration, and so I just kind of followed the dream and didn't really think about it. I've always loved to teach because I like to study. I'm just the music,
Right.
The way it works and how to make it work is just one of the things I'm always thinking about. And I guess I have a lot of empathy for people. So when I see them kind of needing to figure things out, I like to help and try to help them figure out a way to find what's happening in their ear, and get them to the place they want to be. So I've always been involved in the education, just not in the formal thing till I ended up teaching at, university.
So teaching and education in jazz, this is clearly something that's important to you. I know you're teaching at USC. That's correct, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, how important is it? There's this big debate about, the institutionalization of jazz, and how it's kind of taken root in the schools versus how it used to be, back in the day with Charlie Parker and all these guys, where they really just went to clubs and they listened to each other and they played with each other. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm ambivalent about it. Now, you got to understand that my interaction with this whole animal, the institutionalization that you call, is I only do private lessons. So in many ways, what I'm doing is no different than the world was back when good young players were coming up and wanted to hang out with cats and pick their brain, and you know what I mean, and play with them. So my experience, you could say, is pretty much no different than it was 40 years ago, 50 years ago, 80 years ago. The institutionalization of it, though, the fact that the whole thing has moved out of the clubs and into the schools, I think it's had a dramatic effect on what the music sounds like, on the way people play it, and I think it's also it's just the way the times have moved on. I'm glad that jazz has been accepted as a high art form, that the institutions like the universities and nonprofits want to support and see it as valuable to kids. And of course it has a huge impact on how the music sounds and how it's played.
How do you think it affected the way it sounds with the?
Well, I think that in general, you have to understand that I played gigs, and the gigs, there were people in clubs listening to the music, and it was a happening. The music was not the only thing. It was a fabric of a bigger sociological experiment, and in the school, it's pretty much isolated to it's only the art. It's not interacting in a real world situation. There's no social aspect to it. There's no economy attached to it, and those ramifications have made it far more easy to be isolated and to just sort of come up with something that's far more intellectual and void of all those other pressures. Now, that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I try not to. Sure. I try not to bring value judgments to things, because that doesn't help me help myself or other people. I know what I like, and I do like interacting with people, and I actually even like entertaining people. And I know that's, in many ways, that seems like that's almost a taboo in jazz now, but I dig it. I dig it when people like the music and are having a good time. I like it when people laugh. I kind of would love to be a comedian too. I kind of am.
I've been to your shows. I've heard the jokes.
Yeah.
You're good at that. You're amazing at that. And I sort of do agree with you. And there's this idea that the music sometimes gets over intellectualized, and the entertainment value can be lost at times. Just remembering that we're entertainers as well.
Yeah, but I don't want to sit here and say, that one is good and one is bad. I'm really, sure. Everybody, this music is creative art music. Everybody's supposed to tell their own story. And if your story is this, everybody check out how badass I am and look how smart I am and how difficult I can do things, if that's your story, then you should tell that story. And good luck, you know what I mean? And some people are going to dig it, and some people aren't going to dig it. And if you're a kind of person like me who likes to swing and challenge himself and and have fun and make people laugh, then I should be able to do that, and it should be no less jazz than anything else.
Sure.
And that's and as a teacher or a player, I'm out here to put myself into the situations I'm in and make the best music possible, be creative, use my imagination, and paint a soundscape for that moment. As a teacher, I'm there to help the person get to where they want to go. Mm-hmm. And that's all I'm thinking about. And, it doesn't matter if I like it. The only person that should matter to is me.
Right. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Do you think that is there the same opportunities for younger jazz musicians coming up now as there were back when you were in your 20s per se?
Definitely not the same opportunities. Okay. Definitely not. Are there opportunities? Yes. Are there as many opportunities? Perhaps, maybe more, maybe less. I really can't answer that question. I do know that, look at what we're doing right now. We're sitting here talking, via the internet, and we're able. I mean, I can give lessons in the same way we're talking right now.
Yep.
That
Yep.
was not around when I was in my 20s. So the ability to reach out to people all around the world, the ability for an artist who's not signed to a major label to still have the opportunity to reach out to fans all around the world, to put a tour together, to create new things happening. It's like there are opportunities that were not around back then. And because of it, we have new responsibilities, because obviously clubs and promoters have decided that they don't need to promote our gigs. It's up to us, because we've got this email base and Facebook. And so now we've become not just musicians, but we also have to promote our gigs. And we have to learn how to do that. And I just want to throw down, like I do to all my students, to anybody who's listening, to this from a like from your age perspective, it's all the entrepreneurs now, man. You got to figure out, it might not be clubs where this music is played anymore.
Right.
The future of this music may be pet stores or coffee shops, or factories, or, playing breakfast at some Denny's somewhere. I don't know. It's like, we're going to have to figure out where to, if you've got music that people want to hear, and you find a place to play it, you'll be okay. And there's lots of tools to use now. And that's a part of the creativity now. It's not just what you're going to do on a G7 chord, but what do you want the defining qualities of your music to be? Who do you want to reach out to? Where is the best way to do that? How can you create your thing to make it have impact in the world around you?
Yeah, I like to call it being a jazz-trepreneur, because the internet has, I mean, it's revolutionized a lot of different industries, but sure as hell, it's also revolutionized, the jazz industry. And so you hear a lot of people complaining, oh, it's not like what it used to be. It's not this, it's not that, but it's just changed. I think that's my perspective on it. It's just changed, and you have to find a way to fit into the world around you. And I think that's what you're saying.
Exactly what I'm saying, although I've never heard the words jazz and industry put together before. But, it has a nice ring to it, I got to say.
Hey, it could be something.
But yeah, and, let's face it, I'm getting up in years, and I've been doing this, a lot longer than you've been alive. And so naturally things change, and they're supposed to change. And, you know what I mean? And I'm supposed to be like that. I'm sure I'm like one of those guys that, when Bird came along, the older cats hated him because he was changing the music and, making it a different thing. And then Train came along and they hated him, and Sun Ra and Ornette. And there was, and it's like, and then when Miles added, did Bitches Brew, and rock and roll started being part of jazz. I mean, it's like, that meets a lot of resistance, because the people, you can see like you're being put to pasture. There's, you really love what you're doing. I'm committed to the way I play. I believe in it. I put a whole lifetime of work into this, and to see the world kind of stylistically and aesthetically choosing to move in a newer direction, of course that stings. You know what I mean? And of course, it's easy to have that sort of bewilderment and and even a little bitterness. That's to be expected. I really try to tone it down, and ultimately at the end of the day, I just play and try and find people who want to hear it. But but it's, everybody needs to do what their thing. But when I hear young people bitter about it's not the way it was, they don't even know the way it was. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's just ignorance. Right. With what they are, and there is this whole thing of like people, there's an entitled, how can I say this politically correctly? Okay, I probably can't, but there's the people who are going to college are entitled people. They can spend a lot of money. They can go into debt, whatever. I mean, even just being able to go into debt is kind of an entitled position. That someone will loan you money, and and you go and these are people who. This is the way it works. You go to college, you get a degree, and you get a job, right? That's the way it's always been in this society. Right. No. In jazz, it was never that way.
It wasn't, yeah.
And it's not that way. And I think a lot of people are like spent a lot of money going to school, and they got their degree, and now they're hitting, and they want it to be the way it used to be. Well, it wasn't the way it used to be, where you just like paid $250,000 for an education, and then somebody like said, "Oh, now you're in Art Blakey's band." You know what I mean? It's like it just doesn't work that way, and it never did.
I see it all the time over here in New York, Bruce. Among my generation, I went to school with a lot of guys, and as soon they racked up tons of college debt. As soon as it got out, they didn't really have a plan. They didn't really know what was going to happen. I guess they thought, oh, by the time I'm out of college, I'll be playing a bunch of gigs and playing with these, big people. But, they found out that's not exactly how it works. So
that is totally not, that's not how it ever worked. You know what I mean? And so and then then they start getting mad at jazz for it. They got their degree and they believe that the world works. You get your degree, you're entitled to getting stuff. And it just doesn't work that way. And the only thing that degree kind of gives you the ability to do is to get a job teaching this music in a university. But there's X amount of positions, and there's 100 times that getting these degrees. So that's an even more competitive environment. And it's just, people are not realistic. They don't understand that when, I used to go hear Art Blakey, even we're talking the 70s, early 70s.
Mm-hmm.
He was playing 6 nights a week on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night. There was 15, 20 people there, and on the last set I was probably the only person there. And even on the weekends there would occasionally be full show and maybe not. That famous Bill Evans Vanguard record, there was probably 20 people in the room when he recorded that. The Village Vanguard, because you live in New York, you know how small that place is.
It's small. It's not that big.
To a kid who's studying jazz in somewhere else, that's a church.
Yeah.
In their mind, that's a hallowed, as it should be. It is a hallowed church, but they just the idea of scale is a little bit distorted.
Illusions of grandeur.
You know what I mean? They're imagining, wow, the Village Vanguard. You're thinking it's like some grandiose place because it's so much amazing history has happened there. And in fact, those cats were margin. We were on the margin of popularity. They were on the margin of popularity. The music's always had great supporters, but to think of it in terms of this sort of packed house all the time and smoke and mirrors and everything looks like the Grammys or something. It's just, you know what I mean? This music, it's just was played by guys who loved it.
Right.
And it somehow managed, Todd Barkin, who ran Keystone Corner, he's in New York now and ran the club, the Dizzy at Lincoln Center and does a lot of stuff. He, we talked to each other, it was my birthday, and he sent me, he said, and he just said, Bruce, take care of the music and the music will take care of you.
Oh, I like that.
And what a great sentiment that is.
Absolutely.
It just reduces it to the reality of really, why are we doing this and what are we doing it for?
Let me change gears really quick here. I want to ask you this question because I've heard you say it before, and so I'd love for our audience to hear this. We are learnjazzstandards.com. Are there a certain handful of jazz standards that you would say, as a jazz musician, you need to know these songs?
Oh, of course. I mean, there's a handful of them, and I've thought of this and I use this. This is actually, I have a podcast as well, as Guitar Wank, it's called, with Scott Henderson. And I've actually brought this up on my podcast. Yes, with all my students, I have like a list of 10 tunes that I suggest they learn, and I have a reason for that. And the biggest reason is so that you learn to hear how melody and harmony and form, the basics of those three things, interact. so that as you go through learning more tunes and writing your own tunes, you have a really solid basis of how it works.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why I call them the mother tunes, these 10 tunes. But, you know, every tune teaches you something, but you've got to learn it. You can't read it in a book. You have to learn it. And if you don't learn it, really, are you even ready to call yourself a jazz musician? You know, it'd be like a doctor, you know, who's going to operate on you, like needing the book when he was operating.
Scary. Yeah.
You want that doctor? I don't think so. So yes, I have a list of 10 tunes, you know, and they're the obvious ones, and of course the great thing about them is you can call them anywhere at any jam session and everybody will know them. I know a lot of the hipster guys will put you down for calling a tune, but I'll guarantee you there ain't nobody on earth who's played that tune well enough to say that they don't ever need to play it again.
Right. There's always something new and exciting that can happen on any tune, you know.
Or if there's not, then they're not really jazz musicians, are they? Because you know, you got to, and it's all about imagination and creativity. You know, if you're playing a one chord vamp, if you're playing the blues, if you're playing Autumn Leaves, or if you're playing Giant Steps, or if you're playing, you know, whatever new tune you want to play in 7 with a bridge in 13, it's all about being creative and making great sound.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's like, you know, I think the basic 10, you know, it's pretty obvious what they are. I think I've already, even for your website, submitted that, haven't I?
I think it's somewhere on there.
Yeah. And I mean, because I've known you since, you know, we met when you were in a music camp up in Idaho or in Nevada somewhere, and you know, and I just really believe I just got a whole different way of teaching because I know how I learned and I know how the great players I've played with learned, and I just think there's nothing wrong with learning that way. So
right, no, absolutely.
I'm gonna be that guy who says, you know, learn tunes, learn to hear, play within your means, get a good feeling, get a great sound, start there, be melodic, you know, express yourself. Listen to what's going on around you. Always be able to hear what's happening around you. Those are the hallmarks of playing that are far more important than playing some difficult shit or having the hippest, newest licks in your quiver. You know.
So give us the top 5. What would you say are the top 5?
You know, I got a 5. You know, I mean, obviously, Take the A Train is a great one. It gives you the sound of the 2 dominant chord in the clearest, most possible way. If you really learn that tune, you're never going to hear a 2 dominant chord again and not know what it is. You know, and then Honeysuckle Rose, it's the best study of 2/5, and plus that particular way that melody works is just pretty much in everybody's vocabulary. So, and of course that bridge is like the most famous bridge ever. All the Things You Are is the best study of the cycle of fourths, cycle of fifths that you'll ever have. And you know, and it's got all the moves. It goes to the 4 chord. It does all these things. It's got cool modulations. I definitely, you know, Just Friends is a song that starts on the 4 chord and works its way down. There's a lot of songs that do that. You need to learn to hear that. Cycles back through the relative minor in the second A, in second half. It's also got a first ending, second ending type of form. Obviously, Autumn Leaves is the world's best coexistence of the relative major and minor, and it's got a slightly odd form in the way it doesn't have a AABA. It's kind of like AABC. You know, these kinds of songs and the melodies are so indicative of the harmony,
right? Yeah,
that you learn to start hearing these 2 things together instead of memorizing a melody and memorizing the chords and somewhere down the road hoping they all kind of come together. These songs will teach you that they are together from the first moment, and you're starting to develop a holistic concept of how to approach playing.
So when you're taking a solo, when you're improvising in general, are you splitting your brain in all these different categories you're talking about? Are you focusing on the melody more? Is there anything particular things maybe in the practice room that you would work on?
Okay. Well, in the practice room, it's way different than in the playing, on the stand.
Sure, yeah, we could talk about both.
But I still, in the practice room, I still think there's certain things you need to do. Definitely having great command of the melody and being able to embellish on the melody. That's something I work on to this day all the time. Introducing harmonic information, but within the context of the melody.
Monk did that all the time. Monk did that.
Yeah, yeah, and taking other melodic ideas, motifs, and working them through the changes, but not in the context of molesting the idea of the motif. I mean, developing the motif. Like maybe you'll start off with kind of small intervals, but then, you'll hear a big interval jump, and then that becomes a sequence of events that you work through the changes. Just some sort of really contextual storytelling. And the beautiful thing in practice is you can stop and like, wow, I heard this, but I played that. Why? What was I hearing? And what did I, and you correct an intervallic issue that you have. Like, we need to develop savvy so that when we hear a note from wherever we are, we can just play that next note. And so, like, you hear a note and you go to play it. If you didn't play the one you wanted, find out where it is, and you're training your brain to work by ear, and then you can also use your mind to help you guide to find harmonic information, where the thirds and sevenths are, things like that. That's a great way to do it. I do these things all the times when I'm shedding, and also I would suggest highly to play a line of continuous eighth notes through everything is a great way to practice through a tune, because it forces you to on a lot of levels. One, you start to hear resolutions as they're about to happen, and if you're going to get there early, you learn to adjust to it, or if you're going to get there late, you might want to adjust to it. Your time gets better, your chops get better, but more importantly, when you're swinging, it feels great, but if you stop swinging, what does everybody do? They stop playing and they start another line. And in practice, is that really a good idea? Isn't it better to learn to develop the ability to, as if you feel it stopping to swing, to be able to correct it and get it back on the tracks? You feel the train coming off the tracks, and if you can correct that in your practice, then when you get to the bandstand, your confidence and your ability to give yourself to the music and just pay attention to other people is just, that's what it's about. And you've created a method that has made you strong fundamentally so that you can do that. Right.
So you're definitely of the school of, when you're on the bandstand, you shouldn't be thinking about much. You should be, that was the time for the practice room,
Exactly. But then again, if you're young, and this is new to you, of course you have to keep the changes in your head. Sure. Of course you have to keep track of the melody, and so what you got to try and do is know where you're at, and use the funny thing about jazz, and this is a pet peeve I have. It seems to me that in jazz, particularly young players, are all about making it harder for themselves. They're trying to do all this stuff and thinking about all this stuff, which totally pulls them away from what's happening around them, or the elements of sound. I mean, I've watched guitar players not even know what pickup they were using. Because they were so stuck on trying to play whatever was in their head, that they were that unaware of what's going on around them, that they literally didn't know their sound was not what they thought it was.
Oh, they switched to the bridge pickup or something like
that. Yeah, and they were just unaware of it. I mean, not that they wanted it, but they just didn't know. And like, that shows you that, the brain, our brains, we're intellectual creatures. We should be, every step of the way, we should be making this process easier for ourselves, not harder.
Right.
That's what the brain is for. And so it just, so you get into a situation, well, if all you can deal with is, I know it's in this key and I know it's this many bars, then that's where you start, and you listen to what's going on around you and you make something happen. But pretty soon, before you know it, then you can start adding the changes in. Then the next thing you know, you can start adding the substitute changes in. You can react to rhythmic ideas around you. Next thing you know, you're quoting tunes inside it from other places, and it's like these things happen on a very organic and an evolutionary process, and that's the genesis of your style as a musician. And people are treating this stuff like it's a recitation of shit that's been played by other people. And I mean, I don't know. That's the guys around me when I was your age or younger than you and I was coming up, they not only encouraged originality, They demanded it.
Wow.
I mean, if I got up and I was listening to Wes all day and I started playing octaves with my thumb and everything, they would get mad at me.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
They would say, like, hey, if I wanted Wes Montgomery, I'd have hired him. Hired you. Give me what you got. I don't want you at home playing with your records. I want you here on the bandstand playing with me.
Gotcha. Okay.
I mean, that was the kind of mentoring I had.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying don't copy the masters that you love. Of course you should. But don't, I guess, be influenced by them. Don't copy them.
You got to find your own voice.
Right. And, be creative. I mean, damn. Is that, it's your life.
Right.
Really, at the end of that, you want to say, yeah, I really regurgitated a lot of great Pat Martino licks, man. Isn't that really cool? It's like, I don't even know if Pat Martino would think that was cool.
Right. You might feel flattered for a second, but then after a while it'd wear off.
Or ask him about him playing his own shit, man. He might even say, I wish I'd played some other shit too. It's like, so. So anyways, but I do have online master classes at mymusicmasterclass.com.
Mymusicmasterclass.com. There's going to be a link for that in the show notes. So if you're on the website right now, be sure to check that out. You can check out Bruce's master classes there. Yeah.
I mean, because a lot of these things we're talking about, I not only talk about them, but I as a teacher, I like to give people exercises. I feel like just explaining something isn't enough. We need to craft a methodology for actually doing it. So, in my things, I will go into details how I think a great way to practice to develop these particular things would work,
So I also want to talk to you a bit about your new podcast here with Scott Henderson, Guitar Wank. Tell us a little bit about the podcast.
Well, it is so much fun.
It is a lot of fun. I've been listening to it. It's hilarious. I mean, the logo. If all you have to do is see the logo, and you'll be laughing. So that's all you need.
And it just happened because Scott and I are buddies. I've always loved his playing, and and he says the feeling's mutual. I'm not so sure. He might be a liar, but we hang out and we go out and have breakfast. It's like geezer breakfasts. You know what I mean? We go out and we go to this one diner, and this one guy came out. A friend of mine, this Australian guy who's a great guitar player, came out and hung out with us. And he heard us talking, and he says, "Oh my God!" He says, "The world needs to hear this. This is great. We should make a radio show out of it." And then he said, you guys are like those two old guys in the balcony of the Muppet Show.
Oh yeah.
So we said, okay, let's do it. So he has a studio, and his main business is selling movie cues for trailers. He makes those movie soundtrack.
Oh, okay,
cues.
yeah.
And so he has a studio, and so we just got together and got a logo, and we get together most every week, and we put some in the bank when we're on the tour, you know what I mean? And we just release about a 45-minute hour podcast just where we talk about playing, and we, it's a little bit of teaching and a lot of laughing and a lot of complaining and a lot of, criticizing and heckling and ranting, and we just have a lot of fun, and it's been real exciting, and people chime in and ask questions, and we answer them on the podcast, and it's sort of like that show Car Talk, but for guitars, with dirty words.
Right. And I don't want to say that it's a much, a lot funner of a podcast than this one, but I mean, to be honest, it is. You got to go check it out. It's guitarwank.com. Excellent show. Scott Henderson, Bruce Forman.
Well, thanks, Brent. I appreciate it. We sure love doing it, and it's basically we are doing the same thing, and it's really, I think what everybody needs to realize is it's about creating community. You're helping people out by putting up the information you put out and reaching out to people and enabling them to connect with each other, and ultimately, whether we're on a gig or we're teaching a lesson or we're doing a podcast or we're putting up, a blog or whatever, it's about the community. We all need each other, and the world needs more great music and more creativity and more people who are positive, working, to make the world a better
Absolutely.
place. And,
Yeah.
and that's really what this is all about. And I think if we remember that, we can't go wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what we do here on Learn Jazz Standards, creating community, sharing music with everybody, and so it's a great thing you guys are doing. Love the show. Can't wait till the next episode. So looking forward to that.
Well, they come out every Monday night like clockwork. I'm amazed that we've
night.
been able to put 17 in a row out.
That's a lot of episodes. I mean, and it does take time to do the podcast. So, it's. Okay, well, Bruce, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Thanks so much for being on the show. We know you're a busy man. I know you're about to head on out to a gig. Where are you headed tonight?
I'm headed to Santa Cruz. It's there's this great place called the Kumba Jazz Center. It's been one of the greatest jazz clubs in America for over 40 years now. And I'm playing with my trio, which is on my new CD, The Book of Forman, with Marvin Smitty Smith and Alex Frank on bass.
Right. Excellent. Okay, Bruce. Well, thanks again for being on the show. Hope you enjoy your gig, and we'll hope to talk to you sometime soon.
Hey, Brent, always great to hear from you and talk to you, and congratulations on everything.
All right, and that is all for today's episode. We want to thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I know I really enjoyed talking with Bruce. I learned a lot just from chatting with him, and I hope you did too. And if you have anything to comment on about today's episode, feel free to leave us a comment in the comment section below. If you're on the website, we'd love to hear from you. And just a reminder that all the music on today's episode is by our guest, jazz guitarist Bruce Forman. It's his latest album, The Book of Forman. You can check out that music. Go to cdbaby.com, look up The Book of Forman. You should find that music there. And also another reminder, if you got value from today's podcast, consider adding value back. Support the podcast. Leave a donation by clicking the support button below on the player, below the player if you're on the website. And if you're not on the website, go to learnjazzstandards.com/support. Okay, and next week, we're going to be coming out with episode 11 of the LJS podcast. We'll see you then.